Welcome to Meeple, uniting players around the world. A 30-minute exploration of PJ and Gareth's board game experiences from across both sides of the Atlantic. Each episode they share their thoughts and opinions on the world of board games, including their favourite themes, games, hot topics, and much, much more.
I want to tell you all about two people who have just completely, as I was telling them before the recording, have invaded our home in the past few months. Their game is amazing, and they have another one coming out. So we're going to talk about their whole work. That's Dusty and Amy from Dux Somnium, and we're going to talk about their games Botany and what is hasn't been fulfilled yet, LaFleur. Is that right, guys?
Yep.
Yeah? Well, Dusty and Amy, thank you so much for being on Meeple to Meeple. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We're very excited.
Yeah, I'm more excited than you guys, right? Yeah, our listeners are going to get a whole new me today. Just, I'm going to try not to stutter and fall over myself.
Funny.
No, you guys are great.
What about, I always get nervous too. I'm so nervous and shy.
We were, ever since Botany, nobody cares about me, but these girls keep coming up to Amy and they're like, I'm totally fangirling right now. I'm fangirling over meeting you. And Amy's so shy and just not one to have fangirls, and she's like looking at me like
fanboys.
Well, she's like, what's happening? So yeah, PJ can fangirl out too.
Unfortunately, I can't fanboy too much about Amy because all my communications were with Dusty.
That's because she's so shy. Yeah, it's all me.
So I feel like all the emails that came from Dusty. So I feel like I've got a better relationship with Dusty, and that's unfair. And I hope to change that today. So Dusty and Amy, you why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves, how you got into the board gaming community and into designing games, because y'all have an interesting story.
That is a roundabout story.
Sure is.
So we've been playing games a long time. I started in elementary school with Axis and Allies and BattleTech and Magic and typical very nerdy 90s kid stuff. And Amy and I started dating when we were 14. And so we kind of grew up into it. And we
also always played Rummy.
Rummy 13 with my grandma.
Oh, sure.
It was like 90
she was she was in her 80s when we met. She made it all the way to 101 and was still like just an absolute rummy shark until every
time we played with her, and she beat us like almost every time.
Ruthlessly, wouldn't care. We play that, and then we kind of got into it. We started getting into lighter games that Amy would play, and so like Munchkin and Dominion, Small World, Ticket to Ride, stuff like that as they came along. And
you're checking off all the boxes right now.
I know. Yeah, our pedigree is good. Yeah, for sure. And so fast forward to we finished college, we got married, we have 4 businesses, and they're all there. It's relevant to, I'll gloss over some of it, but it's relevant to how we got to board gaming.
Sure.
The first 2 businesses, one is website platforms for travel marketing organizations, and the other is photography. Wedding photography. Yeah, and we said, haha, between these two, we are so diversified. Nothing will ever come along that simultaneously destroys travel and events.
Little did you know.
You can tell where that's going. And so 2020 rolls along and decides that we shouldn't do a whole lot of work for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And
we needed to find something else. So we were like, well, also I love taking pictures, and so we were like, well, I want to build a lavender farm. And then how can we make some money? So
we live next to the ranch I grew up on still. And so we have a lot of space for lavender. Yeah.
And then we're like, well, lavender takes a little while to grow. So let's do some like laser work and make some flower presses. I love flower presses.
And those took off like crazy. Cool. We sold a couple thousand of those in a year and a half.
Actually, whenever we were like trying to figure out what products to make, I was like, I want to make a flower press, and Dusty's like, I don't know about that. It might not.
I said, no one's ever going to buy these stupid flower presses. I mean, they look real nice, but no one's going to. And then,
and that's like the thing we sold the most.
We hardly ever sold any lavender because it wasn't really harvested. Yeah, but we sold tons and tons of flower presses. Okay, so all that condenses like half our lives into how we got to manufacturing board games.
Well, sort of, because then Dusty wanted a resin printer to make his own.
I started painting Warhammer and playing Warhammer, and I wanted, which was denied me when I was a child. Thank you, parents, because it was too expensive. My parents wouldn't let me do it. And then one day I realized I'm an adult. I could play Warhammer. And so
I still make that argument today when people ask me why I don't play Warhammer.
My stepmom asked me when I'm going to grow up, and I'm like, I make a living not growing up, like specifically. So we were driving to a wedding, and as we often do when driving 3 hours to a wedding, we were just talking about business and coming up with ideas. And I said, well, I really want one of these resin printers. I want to print my own miniatures.
So and like make a business case.
Yeah, and Amy's like, okay, well, make it. Why don't you try to make some money off of it then? And I was like, well, people sell miniatures on Etsy, and we, that's where our flower press store was, and we were really good at Etsy. And I was like, well, I could do that, but all these people are selling the same thing. Well, if they're all selling the same thing, how do we differentiate? Oh, we must need to pay somebody to make our own sculpts, and then we'll sell our own miniatures. And Amy goes, well, if you're making miniatures, you might as well make a board game. And that was it right there.
But then we were making another game, like a
sci-fi fantasy, all the above, and that's still going slowly.
It just takes a long time.
We realized how expensive miniatures are and how much art costs.
You're going to need a staff pretty soon.
Well, we have had employees for our other businesses, and I'm a big fan of contractors, so we're going to try and ride that out for as long as we can. But we're getting there. And
I want to point out really quickly. And this is for Gareth's sake. You drove 3 hours to a wedding. Okay,
all the time.
Our English friends complain about a 1 hour drive and how long that is. Yeah. So I love that when you said it.
5 hours.
Yeah, we drive 5 hours to a wedding, no problem, and come home that night.
We do.
You're in California, right? You're in California? Is that correct?
Yeah, and nobody, so people in Europe don't understand how big California is. I'm like looking at countries over there, and I'm like, oh, that's only 40 miles across. My mom lives farther away than that.
Yep, it's true. Yeah. It's so true.
So we figured out all this stuff was very difficult, which was fine. Right. We knew that we were going to be figuring those things out. We've done stuff like this enough times before. But Amy was in the kitchen one morning, and she goes, hey, I have an idea for another game. And I said, oh, okay. And she said, I'm like, what's it about? And she goes, well, it's about pressing flowers. And I said, okay, well, that's on brand for us. We have a fan base, maybe that could work. And I go, what's the story? And she's like, well, I've been reading all these books. Amy collects old antique books. Okay. And from 1800s, 1700s. She's like, well, I've been reading all these old books about all these guys that would travel all over the planet looking for flowers, and they'd be losing eyes, and they'd have a pet falcon, and they'd fall in pit traps with bulls at the bottom, and they'd be on the side of an active volcano.
And Dusty was like, I can work with that.
I'm like, yeah, we can make this work for sure. There's lots of non-traditional board. So now we have all your pretty flowers, and we have adventure. Perfect. Like, what? And I was like, okay, well, they're traveling the world. And then we sat down. We're like, well, what's the game look like? Well, they're traveling the world. Okay, well, that means there must be a map, and you move around the map. What happens when you move around the map? Well, all kinds of, you got flowers, and these guys would be hunting specific flowers.
Random events would happen.
Yeah, and all these random things would happen to them. And so, okay, that sounds like an event deck.
Oh my gosh, like seriously, pirates happen all the time.
The more ridiculous the stories are, 90% of the most ridiculous stories in that game are just things that I took and loosely based on real stories that I condensed into 3 sentences. And then it just took off from there. We had a playable version of Botany in like a week, and we had a business, and I was already, we'd already put together all the business stuff for our other game. And so, and took off from there.
So you have just managed to breeze through 2.5 of my questions about Botany.
Oh, we are wordy people. Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for that. Yeah. Okay.
You asked a question, you're going to get the whole story.
We can elaborate.
Yeah. Well, you got us to the theme and how you got there, the time period, your influence there, the history, your influence. So let's just back up.
I was going to say also with the history, like the Wardian case came out at that time, which was so fascinating because it like made you able to actually get your plants alive.
It like reversed the survival rate. So they had like a 5% survival rate before the Wardian case, and afterwards they had like a 95% survival rate. So suddenly just the fact that somebody made a little glass case suddenly made it so that the entire research of flowers and building of massive gardens in Europe and stuff was possible.
Wow.
With foreign flowers, basically.
That's amazing. That is incredible. So let's step back just one moment. Let's talk really briefly about like general overview of Botany and how it's played for those of our listeners who maybe haven't played it yet. Maybe they're thinking about purchasing it at your local store. It's what I did. I didn't back it on Kickstarter. I'm sorry I missed it. But so tell us just a little bit about the game itself. Obviously, it's a map of the world, right?
Yep. So you're going to learn something about me and Amy. We don't know any of the technical terms all that well for board game design. And so I did not know Botany was a pick up and deliver game with tableau building until somebody said it to me about Botany.
Okay.
And so
we kind of design games for like we pick out a theme and then we're like, okay, what makes sense?
How do we represent this real world story so that it feels like a board game representation of what's happening?
And we've also been told we kind of build backwards too, because like I have to find the artwork first because it has to be available.
So we start with the story and an idea and
then artwork.
What could represent that, and is the artwork there to support it? And if the artwork's not there to support it, then we switch things around until it is.
Yeah, because we use all historical
art,
except for in LaFleur, we did hire an artist to supplement a few portraits.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as gameplay for Botany is concerned, you have a big map of the world. And so it's a real map from 1867. So it looks all old. And we put places all over the map for places to go look for flowers. And you have flowers in your hand that are like your target, like the places you want to go to collect these flowers. And from that point on, what you're trying to do is create the most efficient routes around the world while dodging all these random things that are happening to you and managing your budget. Because back in the day,
there weren't ATMs.
They would leave England with the amount of money they had, and that was the money they had, unless they managed to earn more money while they were out and about. Like that was it.
Which, by the way, is a brilliant mechanic. The way it works in your game.
Oh, good.
No, it's incredible, right? So it's like the money you have is it, but your estate is still generating income.
Yeah.
Back in England.
I'm super rich back home. I promise. Yeah.
Right. So it's when you return, you then have you get to take your income back and go on another journey, right? So it's constantly back and forth. Yeah.
And so every turn you're spending your money, you're trying to get around the world. You're trying to see if you can circumnavigate the globe or if you should just run around Europe for a bit and come back. And it's basically a race. Everybody is racing to see who can make the best use of the flowers they have, the tools they're given. You can hire crew, you get pets, you get items. I'm so surprised nobody has thought this yet, but I was 100% inspired by Talisman when it came to like getting items and crew and help. And so we took our own, spin on that.
But they would have this. And sometimes the parties for these Victorian flower hunters would be so large.
They'd be supported by 100 people, hundreds of people just to go. And everybody would just be like, okay, we got to get from point A to point B and survive. Why are we doing this? Oh, that guy wants to pick a pansy somewhere. Right. Like,
so welcome to my world.
Yeah.
Okay? Right. Gareth is the wealthy landowner in England. And he's like, I need you to go pick that board game for me. Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Funny.
He's going to kill me. He is going to kill me when he listens
It's
to
not
this.
that different. Yeah, same thing. And if Gareth gets attacked by pirates, maybe you're good with a shotgun. Yeah, there you go.
I'm not, by the way, but yeah, thank you for that. So
then after the race, everybody sees who's got the most points, and whoever has the most points at the end of the game from reputation.
Yep.
Well, the reputation ends the game, but then whoever has the most victory points from the how exotic and how many flowers they got and how big their estate has grown wins the game.
You can also sabotage your opponent.
Yeah, you can take poisonous specimens and shove them in your opponent's garden. That's fun.
Like I personally almost never play that way, but some of my siblings like to play dirty. So we have to put that in there for them.
Yep. And you have an entire expansion kind of devoted to that.
Yeah. They are carnivorous, perilous,
bizarre. It's all the weird plants, like the ones that smell like corpses and poop. Yeah. Anything
were so
extra
interesting
weird
to figure out, find all these bizarre plants.
And we try to make so some of the plants have like things that happen when you get them, and so we try to make it so like this, like if a plant's like the size of your kitchen, like it makes you move slower while you're trying to move it around.
Or super prickly.
Yeah, prickly.
Or like if you get a banana, you get to move more or something like that.
Yeah, like it gives you more pep in your
energy.
step. Yeah.
So here you are on this journey, this game about collecting plants, poisonous and otherwise, later on trees with the expansion on trees. In the Victorian era, you've done all this research, you've gotten the art secure, you've done all this together, and you said, well, how do we make a game about this early on in the process? I was just right before you came on. So over 15,000 backers for Botany, and over
Yes.
$1 million raised.
We were never expecting that.
We were very
expecting
surprised
it.
by day one. It was very surprising.
We're like,
yeah.
what? And his dad was like, "You made how much on a board
My
game?"
dad was like, yeah, but he was like, well, that sounds fun. That'll be nice. And then he's calling, and then after he calls us after he gets up in the morning. He's done all his, the chores out around the property and everything. And he calls us up and he's like, well, what's it look like? And I'm like, oh, we're at $35,000. And he goes, you're at what? Like, off a board game.
Yeah.
It was very surprising.
Still so surreal. And then did you see that we're in Barnes and Noble now?
Yeah, so we're in 500 Barnes and Noble stores. We're in Books
Just
A Million.
saw that. Just saw your post. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it just keeps going. We're already doing a reprint. We did a big print the first time around. We're already doing a reprint. And so we're very grateful to all our fans. Like, we just can't.
Super grateful.
Yeah. We had so okay. So I'm a catastrophizer when it comes to business.
Okay.
And I build all the plans I build are scalable. If we had sold 100 copies, or if we had sold, we're up to we're getting close to 25,000 copies sold. It wouldn't have made any difference in
our
processes and the survivability of the plan. And so everything scaled very nicely, but I was fully prepared to just sell like if we had internal goals, and if we sold 500 copies, that was going to be everything we needed. It was going to pay back all the investment we had made on advertising and stuff like that. And then we were going to print 2,000 copies, and we'd have 1,500 to sell, and I had the whole profit and everything out. And so that was what I was prepared to do, because we worked with Launch Boom, and they're phenomenal. And we felt very confident that we would be successful. We just didn't know that we were going to be as successful as we were.
So I have a serious question for you. In conversations that I've had with gamers and non-gamers, not specifically about Botany, but just games in general, but also about Botany, I was approached and this question came up, and I thought it was interesting to get your take on it. What do you say to people who claim or criticize that a game like Botany is celebrating colonialism? We're in an age where we're trying to, bring harmony, and colonialism is bad. And what do you say to folks who make that critique of your game and others like it?
We're just thinking that these people
they're the original
crazy about
conservationists.
plants.
Yeah, they're just going around having fun around the world, and they're the original conservationists. We live in so this is sort of a tangentially related example, but we live in cowboy country. Even though we're from California, most people don't associate with that. We have our town where we went to high school has the largest 3-day rodeo in the world. And everybody thinks cowboys, cattle tearing up the land, hunting and everything like that.
Right.
The greatest conservationists I have ever met in my entire life are cowboys. They love the land. When they hunt, they do so with respect for food, and they're concerned about the well-being of all, like the deer populations, the duck populations, right? And nobody thinks about it quite like they do. And that's how I think about these guys that were going around the world.
And plus, we were also just it's like make believe.
Yeah, it's make believe.
Right.
First off, have fun.
It's a board game.
But second off, they were only actually, the funny thing was I got fewer questions about colonialism than I did about people being concerned with like, are they going to get involved in this war if it was this time? Or are they going to get involved in if it is this war if it's this time? And I'm like, no, our plant hunters, they're so oblivious. They're just concerned about their plants. They're just running around. But they didn't go to places and wipe out a whole population of plants. They would go to a place, they would bring home like 10 of these flowers. They would take them, they'd put them in Kew Gardens. They were raising awareness about these places all around the world. And
now making seed banks.
Yeah, making seed banks. Right. And if you look at the work that all these places like Kew Gardens, or what's the one in Paris? Is it the Jardin des Plantes or something like that? All the work they do started in the Victorian era, and it started with these guys. And it's like, so my thought is that they're the original conservationists. Things were different back then, but the whole goal was to find these flowers, bring them back, show them to the world, document them for science, learn how to, and then the science also led to more conservation.
And medical advancements.
Yeah,
and
you name it. So yeah, that's
thank you.
my thought about the whole thing.
I love that. I think that's great. I wish I'd have articulated that a little better when that question came up to me with some friends. I'm like, well, it's history. Oh my God, how did I? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
no, that is great. And science has to start somewheres. So we're set in the Victorian era, and I'm going to make Gareth proud. So your game, and I've told you all this beforehand, but for everyone who's listening, if you haven't gotten Botany, you have to. It is a perfect complement to our favorite game, Obsession. Everyone who listens knows that Obsession, you're building your estate. Botany, you play that second, because now your estate is established and you're traveling the world as one of the first conservationists. And you're bringing samples back, you're creating seed banks, you're helping develop medical research and science that would take us into the next century. And that is the beauty of Botany. I love it. That is why it has taken over our home. And it's just a perfect part 2. And I think we've got part 1. I think we have a trilogy. We think that our friend Heather Dixon, who just finished fulfillment on Kickstarter, Apostocracy.
Yeah, we've met Heather, yeah.
Yes, Heather's great. Her game, it's 1851 in London. So you're going to London, you're part of the Ton, you get married. So I feel like you play that first on a Saturday afternoon. Once you got that, then you play Obsession so that you can establish your estate, and then you play Botany and you go and bring seeds.
Spreading your wings to the rest of the world, yeah.
I love it. So I want to ask you about, and I think we'll shift gears to LaFleur, but I was really surprised by how recent Botany was. How much time in design and process and everything between Botany and LaFleur?
So Botany, we basically handed the files for Botany off around July.
And we were already making our next
game
too.
We have a list of 30 games that are on the short list.
I
okay.
just like...
And he cannot stop creating.
Yeah, he kind of gets a little...
I got mad at her today because she's supposed to be working on stuff for like all the printing's like going in process, manufacturing for LaFleur's underway, the whole 9 yards. But we need to get the French files, the French translation files together. And I thought she was working on those. And I go in there and she's got 82 tabs open for a totally different game. There's not even on the next.
Actually, yes.
We already have 2 other games working on that are the next games. And I don't even know where this one falls in the timeline. And I'm just looking at her like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm making another game. Like
playing with 3 different games. I like just finding the artwork, categorizing it,
coming up with ideas, stories and gameplay. So we had already like LaFleur was already baking by the time that Botany's campaign was done. And then once we handed the Botany files off to the manufacturer, everybody's like, wow, you turned that, I can't believe you're already working on our game. I'm like, well, I mean, this is what we do. And we have nothing to do while this game's being manufactured for 4 months. So we made another game, and we already made another one, and we're ready to say it out loud. We have another game coming called War of the Posies. So LaFleur is going off to the manufacturer, and War of the Posies, which is it's a standalone game in the world of Botany. But War of the Posies is more or less done. It needs to be just play testing, but like the art's done, the graphics, the design is done.
It's much smaller. It's just a little card game.
Yeah, it's a little card game that's the other side of Botany.
War of the Posies. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's like every time we have one of these lulls, when the one game is done and being manufactured or whatever, well, we're not just going to sit around. We make another game. And so that's what happened. So LaFleur started like August of last year.
No, before that.
Well, I mean, no. Like in earnest, like 100% focused on LaFleur was like August of last year. By then we already had design ideas and some prototypes and art coming together. But like, yeah, we sat down and really started putting it together. So it was ready by September or October to really start like the next level of play testing. Like we have like all our internal play testing we do, and we think it's in a pretty good place. And then we put it out in the world to see like what kinds of problems do people run into.
Plus, also, so we start off with, I'll show you. Where's my...
Well, we're on audio, so this is not a visual component.
So we usually, write on our cards.
Oh, yeah.
Just a little writing thing. And then, Dusty always is like...
I'm like, hey, Amy's like, what do you think of this? And she's designed 300 cards for the game. And I'm like, well, those are nice, but we haven't what's the gameplay yet?
I like playing with the artwork.
So the graphic design very
absolutely.
much drives the game too. And so if she has an idea, she's like, here's the space you have to work with. What can you do with this? And I'm like, okay, I got this. We can do this. We can figure this
Okay.
out. Like,
So again, I want to back up. Tell us, since LaFleur is not out yet, tell us a little bit about LaFleur setting, gameplay mechanics, kind of a little bit about.
so LaFleur is all about garden parties.
Okay.
And when we were making Botany, we kind of went back and forth on should the, you're putting stuff in your estate. You're bringing flowers to your estate. You're getting conservatories and orangeries.
And people really wanted to build out their gardens more.
Yeah, we were thinking, okay, well, that doesn't really fit in Botany. Like, we're going for like a light, medium kind of game, and that would be, adding that level of complexity would just mud things up. And so for LaFleur, we're like, okay, well, let's take it, and now everything you're doing at the estate, you're doing it like Amy wanted it in Rococo, France. And in Rococo, France, it was all about like, these beautiful, expansive gardens, the views, the water features, the architecture. And of course, and we're like, okay, but why? Why are these people doing this? Well, they want to have garden parties, of course. And so every turn, see how people call it a worker placement game. And again, it's kind of, I think it's more like the workers represent the actions you have, because worker placement is all about like location scarcity and resource scarcity, and that's not really. Amy hates those games. Yeah.
No, I don't like that.
She doesn't like getting blocked.
Yeah. I don't like being blocked.
Yeah.
So you can go there, but you just might not get the best stuff.
Yeah. So
I'm okay with
things
that.
don't refresh to the end around. But yeah, so you're going around Paris and you have artisans, and the artisans each have a unique ability related to one space on the board. And so like that, you place the particular artisan, like the painter, at the flower market, and she can do specific stuff. And you go around and you're getting flowers and using the flowers to buy garden features, and you put them in your garden. They have some score to them, but they increase what your allure. So you have a little tracker that's like, how attractive is your chateau for water and paths and vistas. And then while this is happening, every round there are visitors coming to Paris, and each of them is going to go to the garden party. Like Miss Henriette loves water features because she thinks the blue complements her blue eyes, right? And so whoever has the prettiest water features, that's whose party she's going to. At the end of the round, all the visitors go to everybody's parties, and they shower them with like prestige and opportunity and victory points and all that stuff. Flowers, more flowers, more and coins. And so everybody's jockeying every round. Everybody's jockeying to get to see who has the prettiest garden in different aspects, and based on the visitors stuff, who can attract those visitors.
So you're constantly like peering over the hedge.
Yeah, you're peering over the hedges constantly, looking at what everybody else is doing.
Okay.
You're very concerned with like, oh, Amy grabbed that, the garden feature I was going to get, or oh, I was going to get that flower, and now I got to figure something else out. You can send special invitations to visitors, and so like if two people are tied, the visitors can't decide where to go, so they just leave town. But if you send them a special invitation with you have one of your artisans go and give them an invitation, they'll come to you. And so oh gosh, I'm not gonna be able to beat Amy on this one, we're tied. And then she puts her artisan on the special invitation and gives it to the particular visitor. And then I think I have made more curses and angry faces about these people going to their garden features than I ever imagined possible. But that's the idea of LaFleur. Is it's basically you're competing, everybody's jockeying for position to see who when these visitors will come to their garden party. And then if you win,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you win, you get to host the biggest garden party of all, the grand soiree, which is a very fancy ending.
I was gonna say why we chose Rococo, France. Well, one, I love the flower artist Pierre-Joseph Redoute, and so that is
number one. She came to me, she's like, this guy has so much art, we have to make a game all about him.
Some of his flowers are in Botany, and I just love
really okay.
Yeah, so I love his artwork so much. I was like, and he's the right time period. He actually did work for Marie Antoinette, and also
a bunch of other famous French
like
people
really
back
famous
then.
People. And so I was like, we should include this. And then also, I was an art history minor in college. And so that's why I love like the Rococo over the top. And, I love gold.
So
like
gold to everything. Gold foil, everything.
Gold.
Yeah.
We need the gold, the over the top, the pastel colors. And so that's why.
So again,
That's why LaFleur.
when we make stuff, it's very much based on Amy's whimsy, like what she's thinking about and what she wants to do and where the designs go. And then we'll be sitting there. We have this concept of the super fan, which is how we know like what pictures to take and show and what to market and where. And our super fan is this girl Mary, who is very much just like Amy's best friend. And so we'll sit there and we'll be arguing about mechanics. Like, I think this should happen this way. And Amy's like, that's how it would happen in Warhammer. No, Mary wouldn't like that. And I'm like, yes, that's right. Mary would not like this.
That's all I have to say now.
And as soon as she says that, then I'm like, okay, you know what? That's a good point. We need to work another way around this. We need to come up with a way to make this simpler.
Yeah, and also, so Botany is more light strategy.
It's an introduction to strategy.
Yeah,
like
it's not heavy. It's
supposed to be fun. Like,
I would say that is definitely true. However,
it
can trying to travel around the world efficiently based on the four cards in your hand.
Yeah,
I mean, it's challenging, and then you throw the event cards into the mix. So I want to ask you, Amy, have you played Rococo?
I have not.
But okay, so I believe, based on your description of LaFleur and based on my experience with Botany, I would say that LaFleur would be an excellent complement to Rococo. So in Rococo, you're a designer designing the fashions for the people that will be attending the garden party.
Yeah.
So that's what you have to do. So we used to, we never actually did this, but we used to dream that if you were playing Fantasy Flight Star Wars games, you start with Rebellion. And every time you have a fight at a planet, you have to play a game of Armada. And every time you play a game of Armada and you have a starfighter battle, you got to play a game of X-Wing. And so you go down to X-Wing, then you come back up to Armada, and you finish your Armada game, you go back up to Rebellion, and this game lasts for like 6 months. And so what you could do is at the end of every round,
a year.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of every round, you could
for LaFleur,
at the end of every round of LaFleur, before the garden party, you have to play a game of Rococo. There you go.
To get your passion.
Okay. I would think you play Rococo to get your outfit together, then play LaFleur, and that'll be like the other side of the story.
Yeah, exactly. To get ready for the party.
Who knows? So I wanted to ask you about. I have a lot of notes. I'm scribbling while you were talking the whole time. So, and for our listeners, go back to episode 41 where Gareth and I talk about Rococo. The entire episode, because it's a favorite.
I'll have to go listen to that one. Yeah,
it's really good. It's the art is done by Ian O'Toole, who normally partners with Vital Lacerda, but this game was not designed by Lacerda, so it has the look. It has the look, but it is beautiful. Huge table presence, and I think it's going to be a good compliment. I'm looking forward to playing a game of Rococo alongside LaFleur because we did back it. And we are looking forward to it coming.
Yes,
and getting that orchids expansion. My wife is crazy for orchids. She's got some up in the window that she's been growing for the past 2 years, so she's really excited as well.
The orchid expansion is super fun. Like, I'm biased; it's my game, but man, it's so fun that if we had thought about it when Botany started, I don't know if we might have found a way to like get it in. I mean, it's a lot of extra cards. So the orchid expansion, it's pretty simple. It just adds a whole face-up deck that anybody can grab while you're moving around. And so, because what would happen back then is somebody would, like a magazine would publish about this particular orchid, like in South America, and all the plant hunters it would be like a craze, and all the plant hunters would rush there to be the first person to find this specimen and bring it back to their conservatory. And so we had so you play, it's like a face-up board next to the Botany board, and whatever's face up there, anyone can snag it. And it ends up actually...
you change your routes?
You change your routes because of what pops, and you think you have a plan, and then somebody moves away you didn't expect them to, and they grab it instead. It's actually very inspired by LaFleur, too, because it's the same kind of thing where you're, like, all of a sudden very concerned with who's going to grab this thing before I manage to get it.
So let me ask you, now that you've completed your second Kickstarter project, talk for a minute, because... last week's episode, Gareth and I talked about crowdfunding games in general. Why or why not to back? And we talked about the challenges that designers face deciding to do a project on crowdfunding. Can you talk just for a minute or two about some of the challenges that you faced when you decided to particularly with Botany, because I'm sure you learned a lot of lessons for LaFleur about, okay, we've got a game, we're going to go to Kickstarter. Why Kickstarter over GameFound or other platforms? Why not go straight to a publisher? Like, can you talk about that just for a minute?
Really, we didn't know much about publishers.
We had no idea
Okay.
that people designed games and sold them to publishers. And
Honestly,
Okay.
like we just assumed.
and I sound so ignorant when I say that. We are very experienced business people for years.
And
We've
also
run our
that's
own
why-
businesses.
Also, that's why too, because we know business.
It never.
More
So
him.
like when I look at all the games on our shelf, I assumed that every person whose name was on that game worked at the company that made the game.
Oh,
I had
okay.
no idea until we started listening to Board Game Design Lab, and that was after Botany's
Mhm.
campaign that was the case. So never occurred to us not to make the game ourselves ever. And then we started, step one, I was like, well, how much do these things cost? And so we found our manufacturer. Step two, I literally Googled how to Kickstarter. I had no idea. Amy's brother is a indie game developer, and he made a video game back in 2014 and did it on Kickstarter, and he made $27,000, and it blew our minds wide open.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, manufacturing is expensive. Well, how do we get our name out there? How do we get some hype built up? Kickstarter is a place we could go to do that.
I don't even think we knew about. No, you'd probably back some other games. Dusty likes backing games.
Yeah, I mean, I
Okay.
had backed like maybe 10 games in the time
On
before
GameFound?
GameFound.
No, I don't think
I
we
hadn't
know
backed anything
about
on
that.
GameFound prior to that. I only backed stuff on Kickstarter. And so we were very much just like go to our local game store, see a game. I wasn't really following stuff online that much.
Right.
And so when we backed stuff on Kickstarter, it was because like Amy's brother came to me and he's like, hey, Binding of Isaac 4 Souls is one of my favorite games of all time. And he's like, hey, Binding of Isaac has an expansion. You can go get it here. I'm like, okay, cool. So, and then when we started looking into stuff, we were like, oh, Kickstarter's the one. But as we got in farther, people were like, oh, have you considered GameFound? Well, if you look at GameFound and you look at Kickstarter, there's lots of GameFound-ish games on Kickstarter, but GameFound has a target audience that is very identifiable. It's lots of bigger, heavier games, hardcore games in the hobby. And so the kind of cross-sell you're going to get there is very much tied to those games. So if I was launching the next Gloomhaven and somebody was like, hey, you should consider GameFound, I would genuinely consider GameFound because there's lots. I mean, I back big games on GameFound.
And a lot of our target audience, I feel like, one, they don't even know what Kickstarter
We had
is.
20% of our
Okay.
backers were first-time backers to Kickstarter. It was so many
Wow.
people. It was so many first-time backers that people from Kickstarter were contacting us to find out what we did.
So let's contextualize those numbers for our listeners for just a second. You said
Yeah.
20% of your backers. So there were just over 15,000 backers for Botany, and 20% of that were first-time backers.
had never, 3,000 over 3,000 had never,
That's
never.
huge.
But-
that is
Yeah.
huge.
And so like trying to explain to them what GameFound is would be like a non-starter. A lot of our folks were like, "Oh, I backed a Kickstarter once."
And it was like
or-
a knife.
Yeah, and
or
it was some
Bird feeder.
bird feeder.
bird feeder.
Or like, "Oh, I think I've heard of Kickstarter before. Okay,
Mhm.
I can sign up for this." And so there's an
Sure.
element, depending on who your target market is,
It's
there's an element of like having to educate them on a platform they've never used before. And so you need a level of trust there. And I think if we had gone on GameFound, first off, we wouldn't have had the cross sell that we had. Second off, we wouldn't have had as many first time
and also,
backers
what, like
because they never heard of it before.
90% of our people are women.
85%. 85% of our customers, give or take a few percentage points, are women. And the board game industry is the opposite. It's like 80% men. And so we're working in a niche there. And Kickstarter has a much higher adoption rate amongst women. And so demographically, like it would make more sense. But this is all stuff we learned after the fact. In the very beginning, it was just, oh, Kickstarter is Kickstarter. We will Kickstarter. Yeah,
Okay.
that's how technical it was. And then the idea was
And we found Launch Boom.
we found Launch Boom, and that helped us, because nobody's gonna. It's very rare. Like I tell people, Botany was not viral. LaFleur was not viral. People are not going to buy your product if they don't know your product exists. And so we
Mhm.
found Launch Boom, and they helped us figure out our advertising plan and get the game out there. And we were amazed that so many people, even before the campaign, were interested in it. And so we were feeling pretty confident that we would do fairly well. Like we make enough to pay back the money we spent on advertising. We make enough to hit our minimum order quantity with the manufacturer and
Yeah,
have
I
enough
was
left
like,
over to sell to
Can
people.
you imagine if we even made like 300,000? That would be like.
I was like, I said to her, I was like, it's not going to happen. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Like we
Little
have a
did you
plan.
know.
slow and steady. Yeah, slow and steady wins the race. And we're no matter what comes, we will have a plan that fits all these options.
Yeah.
So
And then, I was
let
going
me
to say,
ask. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and we never even really thought about retail either. Like, what are we going to do?
I had no retail
afterwards?
plan. No retail
and then
plan.
on Kickstarter, we found
Age Contrived,
Yeah.
Bella's Intent. They were working. They were working with Golden Goose, and we met the guys from Golden Goose, and their whole deal is that they help you do logistics. So that was a big one for us with shipping. Shipping is the most dangerous part of Kickstarter. I mean, gosh, you can go to the internet today and see stories about companies that have gotten nailed by shipping, and and that was the win or lose point, like turning point on their campaign.
I think Dusty probably spent more time on shipping than
anything else. I still spend more time. I had a meeting about shipping today. I spend so much time on it. It's so dangerous. It's so difficult. We sold Botany in 89 countries,
and then
we had to figure out how to get that to 89 countries. And so. Yeah, so figured out shipping. We figured all that stuff. Golden Goose helped us figure out sales. They got us. They're the ones that knew the folks at Barnes & Noble to even get us seen by them in the first place. Still had to win it, but to get seen, and it's so difficult to be seen in the era where there's 5,000 board games being released every year. Yeah. And and so it just started to. Once the Kickstarter happened and everybody started paying attention to how many people were interested in Botany, because that's the key. Like, we didn't know it was going to, like, we had to get it out there. We had to get it seen. Right. Once it got seen, then we were like, oh my gosh, people actually like this. Wow. That's cool. That's really exciting. People like it. Now what? Like, oh God, what do we do now?
Well, and also whenever we were designing the box at first, we tried different things, and I'm like, that's not what I was envisioning. And so I ended up designing the box, and like, people are like, I love the box.
No, it's gorgeous.
It's like, it's not like most other board game boxes.
Amy said, I was envisioning every other board game box we have that has like crazy art and explosions and all this stuff. And Amy's like, or a scene. Amy's like, I want it to look like one of my Victorian books. And
you succeeded at that. I think the construction, it's thick and sturdy. My cat could sit in it and it wouldn't break.
We get so many pictures of cats sitting in that box. They really like it. Yeah.
I also love the attention to detail. You've got an old map of London on the inside of the box.
Yep. Amy loves those maps.
So did you ever lift up the tray outside of the whole thing?
There's stuff under the tray.
Is there really? Don't tell me that. I hate when designers do that.
I was like, well, it doesn't cost as much.
It barely cost anything more. And so we were like, it'll be a surprise for anybody that lifts it out of the box.
For those of you who are listening, I am lifting up my box right now. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Yep. I'm looking at artwork of herbaceous flowering plants.
Yeah.
Oh, look, man. You guys.
We like those little details. We want it to feel like a premium experience for people.
And the back of the board the back of the game board also has flowers all on the back of it. I'm like, why have it just black when you can put flowers on it?
So
Amy and I these little details, Amy and I fought so much about, specifically the foil.
Oh yes, the gold foil.
When I say fought, my mom calls us co-combative. We have, even since we were 14, we're running around the house arguing about this or that. And neither of us is afraid to express our opinion to the other.
Passionate about it.
Yeah, very passionate about these things. And so we were
gold foil is expensive.
Arguing about this gold foil. And I was like, nobody's gonna care. This is ridiculous. It's so expensive. And Amy's like, I don't care what you think. I don't care what we do for the rest of our lives. I want this gold foil on this box. And I was like, fine, whatever, as I do, and as Amy does, I realized that when she's pretty and she bats her eyes at me, that she's going to win. And I said, fine, you can have the gold foil. We can make it fit, all business, like it fits within our cost of goods sold to make do all the sales and everything we need to do. You can have it. So the day we post on Kickstarter, the stretch goal, gold foil
on the box.
I'm talking email after email and comment after comment. Oh my gosh. One girl emailed us and she said, when we saw that we hit the stretch goal for the gold foil, I'm like, she's doing this with multiple people. She goes, my mom and I screamed. And I turned around and I said, I'm sorry. You were right, Amy. This is how you make the girls scream. Gold foil. Nerd like me,
Gold
I don't get it.
foil.
Like
There
I
it
never
is.
would have done
Yeah,
this.
and we got the gold foil on the floor too.
Yeah, and the gold foil wasn't
Oh,
even
it
a,
looks so good.
wasn't even a discussion. It was instant gold foil. Of course, you can have that. You got gold foil on War
It
of the
makes the
Posies.
box.
We're making a
It-
tiny little box. The gold foil is
Oh,
going to be
yes,
expensive.
gold.
Amy's like, the box for War of the Posies will have gold foil. And I said, the box of War of the Posies will have gold foil. Yeah, of course.
I love it.
I'd be surprised if we ever make a game that doesn't have gold foil on the box.
I would be very surprised too.
That is fantastic. I love it. Gold foil. That's how it works.
It's our signature. Yeah.
So I'm gonna- so,
it's the
go ahead.
shiny thing that catches people's attention
It's-
when they're
Catches
in the
Amy's
store.
attention. Ooh,
Yeah.
shiny.
if you don't have gold foil in this box, it'll change everything.
Yep.
It really will.
It looks like the old
Absolutely.
books. All those
And
old books had gold foil detail on the front
And
of
the
them.
raised lettering makes a difference.
You totally made Amy's day by noticing that.
Oh, no, I love that. I love that. So thank you. So I'm going to close out our episode with a new segment that we haven't come up with a name for. So if you listen to the last two episodes, you've heard this. I am going to do a voiceover from a rule book. And I'm going to read the introduction. And we're trying to figure out how we're going to do this. I think this last week's episode, it's like you have to guess what it is and message us. Gareth and I are going back and forth on the formula. But it'll be an obvious which game I picked. So I'm going to do that real quickly. Players assume the roles of Victorian-era plant hunters, traveling the world in search of fame, fortune, and the coveted Queen's Prize in botany. As they travel the globe to collect specimens, the players will need to manage their expedition funds, experience thrilling events, and acquire support for their journeys. Whenever a player returns to their estate, they will add new specimens to their collection and build new garden features, such as orangeries and conservatories. The player with the most points at the end of the game will earn the Queen's Prize in botany and be declared the winner. We obviously know what game that is, right?
I don't know. I'm still trying. It feels like it's on the tip of my tongue.
But I thought it was appropriate. Gareth's not here to guess the voiceover or whatever. It's a new segment we're working on, but I thought it would be good to do a voiceover of the intro of your book.
Yeah, you know what? We need to get you to do that voiceover for us for our advertising.
Okay. I'm available.
Radio ads. I'm going to start running local radio ads.
You said you like contract work and contract workers. I'm happy to be a contract worker.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. I also want to say, while I've got the rule book out, the linen finish and the weight of the paper, the quality of the rule book is, it's second to none. in terms
Thank
of
you.
the
So I
books.
love quality things. I'm like, the Victorian era, it was all about like quality, like, so
The pre-production copy for LaFleur showed up last week.
I'm like, it doesn't have
And-
linen.
And we knew it didn't have
Oh.
I'm
linen.
like, it doesn't have linen.
We use Panda Game Manufacturing. They make Wingspan. They
Okay.
make Scythe. They make all the Stonemeyer's
Yep.
games. They make, I'm pretty sure they make a bunch of pandemic stuff. They do a really great job. And
They forgot to do my linen finish.
yeah, so
but
Cardner, our girl from Panda, emails us. She's like, "Hey, just so you know, the pre-production copy's on the way, but the factory forgot to put the linen on it. But you know what the linen looks like, so that's okay."
Yep.
It gets here. Amy looks at it and she goes, "I'm like, these look great," and she's like, "I can't photograph these.
No,
They have no linen on them."
Mm-mm.
I
You
was
know,
like,
that's a huge part of it, because we
Yeah.
try to take, as content creators, we take pictures of your box, your components, your board, your rule book, and that glossy paper reflects the light. And
Yep.
we all can't afford big fancy studios and everything like that. And so this is just amazing. This is fantastic. And kudos for getting Game Trays to work with them, because they make beautiful trays and inserts. Your insert is fantastic.
Thank
I
you.
love a good insert. Our first guest on this show was Richard, the CEO of Folded Space.
Oh, that's cool.
And before we had any designers on, we talked to a man who makes a living making inserts. So thank you for that so much.
Yeah,
So,
I'm a fan of I don't like when I open a box and everything's just tumbling all around
Mhm.
inside of it. And so,
yeah.
yeah, I'm a stickler
absolutely.
for a good tray.
So Amy and Dusty, thank you so much for joining me on our episode and talk about your games. I'm really glad to get the floor to the table. I cannot express my gratitude to you enough. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us join. It's a lot of fun for us. It's still a little surreal.
I appreciate that. And everybody, Gareth will be back the week after this. Will be our Gen Con recap, because I will be at Gen Con for one day, Sunday only, guys.
Oh,
so
Sunday
be on the
only.
lookout.
We're going to be there.
We're flying out Sunday morning. That's
Yep. Be on the lookout. We'll be there Sunday, and then we'll do our recap, and then we've got a few more things planned in August as we creep towards episode 100. Thanks
Congratulations.
again.
That's exciting.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Please subscribe, and as always, we love to hear your thoughts and ideas, so make sure to leave those in the comments. And don't forget, you can also chat with us both on Instagram at Meeple to Meeple.